what makes small bets different?
So this started a little bit of as a philosophy, if you might call it that way. Although there was a tweet that I posted back then in early 2021, I think, where I said something almost as half a joke, like forget doing a startup, just build a portfolio of small bets, and it went a bit viral. At first, I did probably a mistake that many new, especially software engineers turned entrepreneurs do, is that, but I don't know about you, but if I fail 3 times in a row with something very big, chances are I'm going to become demoralized, discouraged, and maybe not try ever again, right? And that sort of failure becomes sticky. And it's certainly very interesting to see their journey, starting with something that seemed very tiny, almost unmotivating, like they're celebrating their first $100. But now, they're doing $15,000 a month or whatever, right? In a couple of months, it made over $100,000, which was very unexpected. It wasn't the best ROI for me right now. It could be starting something completely new. But then a few times a year, 2-3 times a year, there's something that makes me see things completely different. Oh, interesting.
Daniel, welcome. It's so great to meet you in person.
Yeah, same. Likewise. Hi, Michael. Good to meet
Hi.
you.
Hi. So, for those who are joining us and meeting Daniel for the first time, you're the founder of Small Bets Community for Entrepreneurs, and you
Mhm.
run a thriving online business. You're helping entrepreneurs building communities. And I understand you left a software role at Amazon, and now you work for yourself. So,
Correct. Yes.
tell me about what you're doing here.
Yeah, no, I think that was a very quick, I think, intro, right? So, yeah, basically my background, software engineer for a long time. Things were going well there on paper, but sort of, I think I realized at one point it's probably a career as a full-time employee probably wasn't the perfectly compatible with my wiring. And I have nothing bad to say about Amazon or the places I worked before. It's just, I think, just the work arrangement of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, 40-hour week, week after week was just not the ideal thing for me. So back in 2019, I took the plunge, early 2019, I took the plunge into self-employment. I didn't have any plans about what I was going to be doing. And long story short, happy to talk about more in details. I tried many different things. I was doing some freelancing. I was doing some information products and various things. I stumbled into what many people now call the creator economy, right? This idea of basically productizing some information and knowledge that you have in your head into these products, videos, courses, books, self-published books, and so on and so forth. And I had some small wins over there as well. And the most recent, I would say, business and activity time planning for it's approaching the 3-year mark now, has been the small best community, which you mentioned before, which allows basically people who were mostly in a similar situation like I was before, where things are daunting and lots of uncertainty, and hopefully we try to help each other tame a little bit of the uncertainty, and it's a mix of educational content and support network and some fun as well, because we sort of have some gossip channels and so on and so forth. But that's that's an accident. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me, what makes small bets different? I really felt a strong affinity to small bets immediately, but I want to hear in your words, what makes it different?
So this started a little bit of as a philosophy, if you might call it that way, although I wouldn't even, maybe it doesn't even deserve that label. And I think as I was trying to make my self-employment thing working, right, first I did probably a mistake that many new, especially software engineers turned entrepreneurs do, is that I picked up one particular project and I decided to treat it very seriously, just like I used to treat projects when I was an employee. And when I was an employee, usually, my boss or the company were to say, we have this big thing we need to do, and I'm in charge of it. And then I would break it down into goals, make sure we're making progress towards the goals, and all these kinds of things that you tend to do. And then, if the thing gets delivered, typically you get rewarded, you get promoted, or you get a raise, or at least you get keep your job. But that's the success scenario. And I thought, okay, self-employment, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm good at this thing. I'm going to pick a project in a field that I have some expertise in, something that I think I'm capable of doing, and it's going to work hard, do the right things, and eventually destiny will reward me with some success. And of course, in hindsight, that's super, super naive, because we're dealing with a market that doesn't care about destiny and how hard I work or or any of those things. It's much, much more brutal, right? And it's not just brutal, right, but it's unpredictable, uncertain. It's very hard to understand what's going to work and what won't. So long story short, right, as I went through six or so months into this project, subconsciously I started to feel first of all, that 6 months had passed very quickly. In a blink of an eye, oh my God, wow, it's already 6 months. I was burning through my savings. I had some buffer with my savings, but certainly I didn't have infinite runway, right? So I was worrying that another 6 months might come very soon again, and maybe another 6 months very, very soon. If I don't start making money, I'm going to wipe out all my savings and having to go back to a full-time job, which I was escaping from, right? So that was a bit of a stressor that I think helped me a lot. It was a bit of an epiphany, because then at one point I realized, okay, what do I care about? What I cared about was mostly not to make this project successful, but to continue to sustain the self-employed lifestyle that I was living. I was certainly enjoying the flexibility, the independence, the ability to choose what to work on, when to work, how much to work, from where to work, what tools to use, not having to ask people for permission to do things, and so on and so forth. I wanted that. So I almost started to work backwards again, like during this there was this week where I was like very anxious and stressed, thinking, what do I do next? And I thought, okay, the most important thing for now would be to start paying my bills, right? To make sure that at least I can, cover the essentials. And I thought, what's the easiest way that I could maybe make $1,000, like this month, for example? And I wasn't thinking of anything big. And in fact, the very first thing that came to mind, I thought maybe I can do some freelancing work. And I started scrolling to the contacts on my phone, and I found someone who I knew needed some programming help. And I offered that maybe I can pick some things off their backlog. And I said, maybe I can do 20 hours a month, not even a week. Right? So I didn't want to have all my time tied up to one client. I didn't want to get into a full-time arrangement again, right? But this was great. So I started making a couple of $1,000s a month. Certainly not a lot, right, by any means, but it was an incredible increase in peace of mind compared to before. At least some income was coming in, and I thought maybe I could do more of this. I could do more freelancing, find new clients, increase the hours, and so on and so forth. But then that new peace of mind allowed me to start to tinker with different other types of projects. And I started dabbling into what now we tend to call information products. Right? In fact, probably one of my first small successes, small wins, was writing a very short, technical, self-published book. Right? So typically, and again, like I didn't know the industry before. I used to think to write a book, it was a grueling process. You have to go find a publisher, edits, and it takes months, sometimes even years. But then I got introduced again by accident, stumbling on people on Twitter, that actually, right, you could nowadays just write your own book in Word, as file safe as PDF, and put it on the market yourself. There might not be the same upside. You're not going to become the next J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter and make $1 billion, but the chance of making 4 or 5 figures from something that you might have spent just a few weeks doing, right, seemed to be very plausible. And I did that, right, and probably I was a bit lucky as well. This first book did very, very well. Within a couple of months, it made over $100,000, which was very unexpected. I was thinking I would be super happy if it made even $5,000. I thought it would have been a good return on investment of my time, and it exceeded my expectations. And long story short, I kept doing many of these small projects, small things here and there. And I started to realize how, almost by accident, right, what helped tames most of the uncertainty of self-employment for me wasn't trying to be a visionary, identify a need in the market and gather resources and going after it. It's a bit like how Silicon Valley tries to make us want to think, there's an opportunity in AI. You should, raise $1 million, hire people, go after it, kill yourself with work, right? Until forget everything else, put the blinders on and just focus on one thing. At one point I was doing 5 different things. I remember probably in 2021, right? I was still doing some freelancing. I took another freelancing client, a bigger one. I had like 3 or 4 information products, a paid newsletter, doing various different things. And suddenly my income started to become, all these lines, different income streams. When you overlay them together, it was becoming sustainable that way. I mean, things were still quite unpredictable, but adding them all up made it much more reasonable. And there was a tweet that I posted back then in early 2021, I think, where I said something almost as half a joke, like doing a startup, just built a portfolio of small bets, and it went a bit viral. Right, it got like 200,000 views or whatever, 2,000 likes, and the term resonated with people. And I got lots of questions. What do you mean? Is this a small bet? Whatever. It was still a loose term that I didn't really think much about, but something clicked with lots of people who were following me on Twitter about the term, right? And for a few years after, 2 years or so, I started hearing the term referred by other people. I'm doing small bets like Daniel, right? I started building a portfolio of different projects, small things, and so on and so forth. So the small bets community that exists today also almost happened by accident, I would say, that where in the end of 2021, after the sort of term started to gain popularity, I did a mini live course. I did this 2-week, 6-session Zoom live course where basically I tried to describe in as much as detail as I can with lots of examples the strategies that I was doing to decide what ideas are worth pursuing, what my selection criteria for choosing what is worth doing or not, how do I find inspiration for new ideas, lots of things that I had lived myself up to that point that have helped me and sharing and whatever. This was the course. And during this course, I had set up a Discord server. Initially, I barely gave it any attention. I put it online, mostly so that we can share links and notes with the people who are joining this course. But then this Discord server took a life of its own. Like the people who joined the course kept, even after the course finished, because that was my expectation. The 2 weeks, the course finished, everyone goes their way, and that's it. But many of the people kept coming back to the Discord server with questions. So I'm doing this thing. I got my first small win. I made my first $1,000. I have this idea. What do you all think about? And so on and so forth. And long story short, there's a bit more in between, right? But sort of this group chat eventually became the product that it is today, which is more of a support network, right? Where we're basically helping other people in a similar situation like I was before, navigating the uncertainty of self-employment, not by chasing big grandiose ideas, but by trying small projects, right? And still not randomly small, not just randomly throwing things at the wall. That's still too naive, but still rigorously thinking through, like, does this have a fighting chance to succeed? How does the market look for this thing? Sort of, and then employing those kinds of a little bit of rigor, but still accepting that things are way more unpredictable than they seem. Right? That's one of my takeaways with business. It's not science. It's not predictable like when I had a job as an employee, right, where I could tell that maybe I'm going to get promoted or whatever. The market is wilder, right? And what makes it different, I think maybe the biggest comparison, the biggest conflict it has is with the Silicon Valley style sort of propaganda, I would even call it, right? With the shoot for the stars, land on the moon, that the odds of succeeding are 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 1,000 or whatever they are, super low. But if you're the lucky one, you'll make hundreds of millions or whatever, right? And this is sort of a very orthogonal, different, contrasting approach to actually think small, right? Start with small wins first, go for the low-hanging fruit, and you tame uncertainty by having a small win. There's a common saying that we use in our community that success brings us more success. This is actually not something we made up. This is actually called the Matthew Principle, because this phrase showed up in the Christian Bible 2,000 years ago by Matthew the evangelist, right? For those who have, more will be given; those who have not, more will be taken away. Something along those lines. It's a phrase that seems like a negative thing. In fact, many politicians use it mostly to describe inequality and other problems in life and society. And yes, it has its problems, but in business, we discovered that if you're starting from scratch, your first goal should be to get that small win, make $100, make $1,000. Now you have a bit of success, and that small success will make your next success a little bit better. How? By helping you, first of all, with some very concrete things. Right now that you have, say, 100 customers of something small that you built, you have 100 email addresses that you can reach out to and promote something else. You have maybe testimonials, your reputation improved. You learn more about what works and what doesn't, what you're good at and what not you're good at, and so on and so forth. You get another small win. Instead of $1,000, you make $10,000. Now you're in a slightly step up more into the sort of into the advantage phase, right? You have an even better advantage now. Your odds are more in your favor, and so on and so forth, right? Compared to do something grandiose, it might be a big spectacular failure, which is more the likely case for big grandiose things. And then what? Like, the Matthew Principle doesn't really help you. It might even harm you, right? If you're failing, because failing, a big failure, maybe you manage to gather the willpower to try again, and you get another big failure. Maybe you do it again, but I don't know about you. But if I fail, 3 times in a row with something very big, chances are I'm going to become demoralized, discouraged, and maybe not try ever again, right? And that sort of failure becomes sticky, so to speak. So maybe a bit of a roundabout way of introducing what happened and how this came along, but hope it gives some context.
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah, that I think that makes a lot of sense to me because, like in the Silicon Valley model, right? Someone goes and they solicit investment for their idea, right? They've, as you said, they've done some rigorous like modeling to figure out
Mhm.
like this should be the thing I should do. Let me get some millions, and then we're going to hire the team. We're going to put it all together, and we're going to pivot on a dime if it's not working.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you're not accruing a portfolio, right? So the difference that I'm
Mhm.
hearing from you is with small bets, you're not taking millions from investors. You're self-funding, right? So as you said, one of the first goals is just find a way to make a couple grand to, kind of basic bills, right?
Mhm.
Which you did through freelancing. But then you were able to start building this portfolio of things that you spent weeks on, not years,
Mhm.
not swinging, making the biggest swings that you could ever possibly think of to swing at, but something you could do in a certain amount of weeks, maybe a short number of months. And then you would have a product that somebody could pay for. In your case, it was an ebook that was your first big success, from what I heard, right? And you
Mhm.
made a
Yeah.
couple $100,000 that you didn't
Mhm.
expect to make from this
Yep.
from this. But it only happened because you took a chance to do something that you could push out. You found a way you could do something that you thought the market might respond positively to, that you could do in a quicker way. It wasn't
Mhm.
wasn't at your job where it takes years to do a project, and it wasn't working at a startup where again they're spending months or years to make a grand vision, which they pivot on at a time, and they don't keep
Yeah.
money from every time. So this portfolio, I love this idea. You're building a portfolio, and then I heard the part where you see your income, right? Because you have many streams through the portfolio, there is something of a predictability that can eventually start to happen. What Now, my question for you, like, so this has worked really well for you, Daniel, and it's awesome. I love this. Um, Tell me about some of the people who've got on board. So a lot of people are really excited. I know I was excited also,
Mhm.
hearing your story. Obviously, I'm a member of Small Bets. It's a very engaging community and people are really helping each other. I get a lot out of it. I know that you bring in experts and you have videos and stuff. So it's a wonderful community to be a part of. But also, can you
Yeah.
tell me about what you're seeing in some of the entrepreneurs and some of the people who are in the community? What are some of their growth that you're seeing for them? How are they achieving some of their goals? How are they progressing using Small Bets platform? Tell me about your success stories.
Yeah, so I think attributing sort of attributing success is very difficult, right? And certainly, I wouldn't even want to take credit for what people have achieved because I think it would be certainly unfair. But I think what we get and what I get told very often, and I think what sort of makes me continue to invest time in this and sort of treat it seriously, is that people are seeing an alternative approach to. I think the best thing to describe is not to success, but to taming uncertainty. I like this phrase a lot because everyone understands that there's lots of uncertainty in self-employment and to doing something on your own. And I think this is actually what we're helping people most, right? And taming uncertainty ultimately should mean success, but then success, of course, is a function of many other things, of how much time is invested, how much opportunity there are, the market that is chosen, and the other millions of variables that nobody has any control on, right? But I think it's very remarkable how subconsciously these ideas resonate with people, and they're not novel ideas. None of the things I claim, I sort of promote, I claim to be my own ideas. Mostly um, ideas from other people. Again, some things are very ancient ideas and I think me almost out of desperation at some point I was trying them, not particularly not because I was following ideas, but then later I stumbled into the ideas and then I said, actually, this applies a lot. For example, we promote a lot of Nassim Taleb's ideas of anti-fragility, skin in the game, and the things he wrote about which make a lot of sense to business. And in fact, I would, if I were to categorize Nassim Taleb's work, at least the public work, the books in the Inserto series, I would say that they're mostly about taming uncertainty, right? Making sure you're not fooled by randomness, which is the name of one of the books, and benefiting from uncertainty and protecting your downsides when you constantly know what's going to happen, and not getting sort of caught out when something goes wrong and these kinds of things. So we've seen lots of people like doing very unconventional things, which is, I think this is what there's there's a fallacy, I think, that especially with many professionals, that especially who had invested a lot in their career, and I certainly felt this a lot myself as well. Like I'd say, if you've been, say, working as a software programmer for 20 years, you've studied software engineering, now you've sort of spent 20 years in this career, it feels a lot like a sunk cost, right? It's like a sunk cost fallacy to even consider doing something else. First of all, part of you feel like your identity is a software programmer and you should be doing software programmer things. But then there's also this thing like you feel like you're wasting this asset that you've built, right? All this expertise and knowledge and credentials and whatever. But it's a very irrational way of thinking about things. This is why I think it's a fallacy, right? Because you should see that as an asset, which gives you optionality, not as a liability that just restricts you. It's not something that's taking things away from you. It's something that, yes, the more expertise you have, the more credentials, the more knowledge, the more experience, the better. It will open more doors. It shouldn't close ones, however, right? And I think with the things that we do, and with, I think, and this is, I think, why I like the group chat, because it's almost like a stream of inspiration. You see other people doing unconventional things, starting an e-commerce business, doing consulting, doing ebooks and information products and other services, and trying different things, and it makes you think, right? Maybe I could do something like this. Maybe there's an opportunity for me to try this small project, right? And not necessarily copying what the other people are doing, but maybe applying something that they're doing to their domain, which, by the way, is how many of my things happened, right? I saw someone doing a self-published book in a different domain that I did, and it made me think, actually, maybe I don't need to find a publisher. I don't need to go to a Grueling editing process, whatever, and so on and so forth. And I could maybe try this myself, right? And long story short, lots of the things that I should say, all of the things I did, I can probably attribute to some random inspiration from some random person, like doing something similar or with some overlap to the things I tried. So it's very interesting, right? And there's been the community now has been, again, like, it's approaching the third year, 2 years and 2 quarters, and there's been people who've been around for a long time, and it's certainly very interesting to see their journey, starting with something that seemed very tiny, almost unmotivating, like they're celebrating their first $100, but now they're doing $15,000 a month or whatever, right? And it's not even with the thing that they started with. And this is not the pivot, Silicon Valley pivot style. This is more trying many different things, or the thing that made you $100 opened the door for something else and for something else, and the thing might still be running. Maybe you're not giving it the attention because it's a small thing, right? But the order matters, right? That's why success brings with it more success. You can't, some things you can't shortcut them, right? And it's important to go to these levels, I believe. I wouldn't say it's important, but it's more prudent, right? If you try to jump to the stars immediately, chances are you're going to crash and become very demoralized. So I don't know if that answered your question, right? But I hesitate to not give specific examples, not because I don't have some, but because, again, I don't want to imply that it was because of what I did or whatever, right? It's, at most, I think, we provided some inspiration, and then people take that inspiration any way they can or they want themselves.
Yeah. And also, another valid thing is that you don't want to make it look like, hey, just because somebody got a specific outcome means that everybody will get the same specific outcome, right?
Yes, exactly. There's so much uncertainty. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's assume I'm someone new and I found small bets and I want to get the most out of it, right?
Yes.
What's the best way for me as someone new to small bets community to really, how do those people quickly get the most value out of the community?
Right. So I think a few things. First of all, currently in the community, we have a panel of experts. We call them, basically, these are people with first-hand experience in a particular topic, varying from, starting a YouTube channel to self-publishing books and to doing e-commerce. And tomorrow we have Justin Welch, for example, doing a talk about succeeding on LinkedIn and building an audience there, and so on and so forth. So I would encourage people to, based on their interests and curiosities, where there's the whole catalog of events within in the past, the recordings, and there's live classes and whatever. This is the knowledge part mostly, that you get some knowledge about how things work. Right? If you're trying to build a YouTube channel, it's good to see from someone who built a successful YouTube channel how they started, how the monetization worked, what are the typical challenge, the competition, and so on and so forth. Right? So that's part of it. But then I think the important part to actually get the support network part to help you is to start doing something small, right? Some small project, and just go in the group chat, share it with people. Basically, I like to tell people it's a bit like a party, right? I mean, you want to ideally build a bit of a name for yourself, and to build a name for yourself in these kinds of communities, the best way is to give, right? To give something to the community, right? And giving here doesn't necessarily mean, you give something tangible, free stuff or whatever, but insights or inspiration. Again, right? I did this and here's what happened. Others might be just lurking and say, oh, that's interesting, right? Maybe I can do something similar myself. That's already a good value, right? And people will remember you. And if they remember you, it adds to your reputation. They might DM you and you might do something together. In fact, one of the interesting frequent outcomes that happens in our community is like people partnering up to do something together. They start a podcast together, start a newsletter together, they start a business or a project, and so on and so forth, which I think many of these things happen again just by people mingling, and they mingle in a virtual space like this primarily by sharing stuff, documenting what they're doing, and so on and so forth. So you could do this certainly on social media in actual public, right? And this is something I benefited a lot from, and I encourage people to consider. But there are many people who are hesitant for various reasons, some of them very, good reasons, right? To not want to go on Twitter, on LinkedIn, to be sharing, certain things about what they're doing. Some because one of the most legit reasons, I would say, they still have full-time job with an employer, and this could create some awkwardness if they're marketing something on the side. Sometimes there might be gray areas with the employment contract and other things, but even if there isn't, they just don't want to upset their employer or make things weird, and that makes sense. So they find a community like Small Bets, which is much more closed, that isn't like the general public, it's not indexed by Google or whatever, it's just a closed community. And you get some of the benefits of the social interactivity without the downsides of that. There are people who are concerned by the toxicity of social media as well. You got haters and people who you're announcing your beautiful product and they tell you how ugly it is. Now, depending how much thick skin you've built, it might affect you, right? And again, I think it's something that you should reflect on and be cautious about that possibility, right? And I would say certainly that the small business community is a safe space, very positive. If you want critical feedback, you ask for it and you'll get it, right? But it's not in any way negative or toxic all of that, right? That's sort of not tolerated. So it sort of it provides a channel for people to quote unquote build in public, be transparent with their process in a very safe space, more private, more intimate. And I think it's more conducive to collaborations happening, right? Social media can still lead to that, right? But this familiarity, right? If you're hanging around in our group chat, you see the same people, you get to know them. You're basically making internet friends here. Even though we allow people to be anonymous, most people aren't, right? So in general, most people here, you see a profile, you can click on them, see who they are, you can see their social media accounts, their LinkedIn profile, and so on and so forth, which I think is not because I'm against anonymity. Again, like I let people be anonymous if they really want to, but I think it's very nice to know who you're talking to. And by the way, a bit of a side detail, this is why we moved from Discord. Eventually, Discord served us well. We got this started, but we moved to a new software now, Campfire, primarily because Discord was really, really hard to make people not be anonymous. Like Discord was built for the gamer community, everyone with these cryptic usernames. It let you change your username to a real name, but you had to go to different options, and many people weren't doing that. So we were finding ourselves in this group chat where you're chatting with someone and there's just some random letters and numbers as a name, and you don't really know who they are, right? Which was quite annoying. But Campfire did solve this really well for us.
And so, yeah, I noticed the switch to Campfire, and at first I didn't know because I just saw it was still www.smallbets. So I thought,
Mhm.
oh, he's a software developer. Did he build his own
Yes.
software for this?
Considered it, but no. Luckily, my common sense prevented me from doing. Campfire, I would say, was really probably one of the nice surprises of 2024. It dropped on our lap out of nowhere. We weren't expecting it. We were getting, and to be honest with you, we're almost neglecting the Discord server, right? Because there was still some activity there, but it became it wasn't a place where, and even I was enjoying going. I felt like I needed to check it out because it was my place, but there was this feeling of there's a bunch of strangers where just the things are not happening. And yeah, Campfire just dropped out of nowhere, gave it a try. It was a very, because we tried to be very prudent with how to transition, because we still thought we had like 5,500 people on Discord, right? So we're concerned that maybe we make the switch and then nobody uses it. So we did it in phases. But now that we actually pulled the plug completely, took the plunge completely and forced everyone to move in May. So it's been about, I think, almost 2 months now. And I would say by every measure that you could measure, everything is better, but not by a little bit, but by 10x or 20x, like by message count, by number of distinct users daily, by number of interactions, by anything I could measure, things radically improved, which is great. But also subjectively, I think there's just a better vibe, just more enjoyable. Personally, again, I just the first thing I open in the morning. Maybe I'm a bit biased since it's part of my job, of course. But I just enjoy seeing what other people are doing, and it's just much more better atmosphere, if you call it that way.
I have that
Yeah.
feeling also
Mhm.
as a small bets
Mhm.
member. When we moved to Campfire, as I said, I thought maybe you did it. I didn't know it was Campfire, but I had that feeling like this is the right amount of dashboard.
Yes, exactly.
So I
Mhm.
really had a very different feeling, even though it's kind of subtle, the difference between
Yes.
Discord and
Mhm.
Campfire. Maybe some people won't notice the difference, but for me, it felt more inclusive, like a better place, easier for me to want to share there. Uh, I became more curious again. What's on
Mhm.
each different channel? I wanted to click them, and I saw the podcaster channel, and that's how I found, right, that you might be open to a podcast. And then I was able to reach out to you, and
Yeah.
we talked, and now here we are. So
Yeah.
it's working. It's working.
Yes.
Partnerships are happening.
That's
Uh,
right.
yeah. Now, how do most people find small bets? I think I found you on Twitter. I think I found
Mhm.
a post of yours and I
Mhm.
resonated with it. And I actually didn't do much research after I found it. I said, this is right for me. I'm going to join this and let's just see what it is. But how that I might be atypical in that way. How do most people find you and join small bets?
No, actually, I think your part is probably very typical. And so probably the right answer is through Twitter, but not through Twitter where I post a tweet with a link and people tweet it. Right? It's a very interesting and it's very hard way to attribute. Right? Because I see members. Today I think like 4 members joined. And if I try to figure out where do they came from specifically, it's actually very hard. I might have some information like the referrer where they came from, but it's very hard to do. So it's more of trying to observe what's happening. And I think what happens most of the time is that um, I share something because it gets people's attention, right? And maybe goes a bit viral, not necessarily viral, millions of views, but gets a bit more attention than usual related to the topics we discuss here. Again, like taming uncertainty, self-employment, taking prudent risks, and so on and so forth. These things usually, sometimes I notice when these tweets happen, they generate a spike of sales, not radical, right? But you see a bit different, right? You see that if typically there's like 6 members a day, that day there might be 10, for example, right? Or 12. You notice that there's an undulation. But then I think what you notice later is that there's a long tail that continues from that, like the area under the graph grows. And I speculate a little bit like this. What happens for this kind of product is that, how in marketing they say you could be selling a painkiller or a vitamin, right? And certainly small bets is more of a vitamin. Nobody is like urgently needs to be a part of this community. Right? So this is a bit more of you need this, the circumstances of the typical member need to align sometimes that they might be interested in this. Maybe their personal circumstances, maybe they're not very happy at their job, or maybe they just got laid off, or maybe they're thinking of doing something on the side, or they saw someone else or maybe sometimes a bit of fear of missing out of what's happening in these places. These things need to come together, and then they need to see something from me that gets their attention, and they discover that I run this community, and so on and so forth. Right? So um, I think it's like there's this cloud, right, of people who know about this community but haven't joined yet, and mostly know to it because I speak about things related to it on Twitter, right? And from this cloud, sort of sometimes it rains a little bit over time, right? A few new members who tend to join. But it's interesting again because it looks like this cloud then gets rekindled with more people when I get sort of a spike of attention, right? Which probably maybe happens, I don't know, once a month on average or something like that. But you sort of see these spikes, long tail, and sometimes spikes, long tail, and whatever. And then, hopefully over time, sort of the long tails overlay on each other as well. And sort of that's where the most of the growth happens. There's some word of mouth as well. Right? And to be completely honest with you, I had hoped that word of mouth would probably contribute more. But to be honest, again, it's very hard to attribute word of mouth because sometimes you just read between the lines. People say, yes, I came here because my friends told me about you and whatever. But it's very hard for me to tell you like 10% of members come from word of mouth and so on and so forth. But I would have certainly wished that the reason I think word of mouth is, or I say word of mouth is not as high as I wanted to, because I certainly feel like now that if I don't promote myself publicly, sales would diminish significantly. It's not like people are bringing other people on their own and then I just can't stop talking about it forever, right? And I think this is partly as well, partly because it's not even people who are very satisfied as members, it's not like something that all your friends would be interested in joining necessarily, right? It just needs to be a particular type of friend. Right? So there's a bit of friction with word of mouth happening. It's not like a typical consumer app or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Just because one person loves small bets and they want to do it in their life, it doesn't mean that all of their friends are also going to want to be, entrepreneurs in some sense. All their friends might be happy in their jobs, so they might not be interested in the same way, for example. So tell me about small bets growth. What do you see like the final form of this being? Do you feel like you have a vision? Like, I think this could be like, if you had an umbrella of, this could be more in some way, right? Is that something that you think about? Do you have this kind of vision for it? Because I know, and what I loved hearing earlier was you said it started almost as a joke, right? You tweeted like, what if you make small bets? What if you make a portfolio of small bets instead of trying to do some other path, right? Almost a joke, but people resonated with this. And then you allowed it to take you on a path to making this into a business for yourself that's promoting community and building other people's businesses. What do you see as the future and the vision for small bets?
So it's very hard and maybe I don't think a lot like that as well. I'm very much short term, like what's the opportunity right now in front of me? And certainly I think one of these challenges, maybe I should mention, is that, and of course I skipped maybe a lot in this story, right, in what happened in the last 2 years, is that I have to adapt a lot, right, with what the market needs, and especially for this kind of market. Again, it's like there's lots of whims of the market, maybe I should call them, right, about what people are currently willing to do or whatever. Just to give you an example, right? So this is something I've been doing for about 2 years, right? Organizing these live classes with experts where, again, I mentioned like tomorrow we have Justin Welsh coming in, giving a class about understanding LinkedIn, it's called, about how to sort of build an audience on LinkedIn, how he did it and how he recommends others to do it, and so on and so forth. And these are typically, so I pay the speakers here, I pay every speaker $1,000 one time to give the class, and small bets members can join for free. They will be in the same Zoom room with the expert, they can ask questions, and sort of it's a nice feeling. And so initially when I was doing these in 2022, they were super successful. Again, like I tried them as an experiment with like three hosts, and we were getting like hundreds of people showing up live out of the members. We had when I started, I had like 600 members in the small bets community. Now I have almost 6,000. right? But we're having lots of people showing up live. In fact, we're repeating them very often, sometimes the same class. We're repeating it like every 2 months, just because there was so much demand, or in different time zones, to make sure that people in Australia and in America and in Europe could all join live, and so on and so forth. And this was all good until sort of a bit towards the end of 2023, a bit of last year, where we started to see a bit of diminished interest. It wasn't immediately obvious at first, but you start saying, this class, even though we have more members now, and in theory, based on our numbers, there should be more people joining live, because there's 600 people who never had a chance to join. They're brand new members. But we only got 60 people live instead, and last time we got 100 people. And it became significantly more clear this year, right? Especially towards February onwards of 2022. Now we've got 20 people live. We consider it a huge turnout, whereas before, big turnout used to be 160 or something like that. Right? And again, it's not a case of there's fewer members, there's actually more members and more new members, right? And this is why you start doing the sort of a bit of testing, right? The last time we repeated this class, since the last time we had 600 new members, how come we have fewer live people than when the entire community had fewer than 600 members? You know what I mean? So you can try to understand why, and we thought about maybe we're not sending the right reminders or whatever, and you tweak some things, but then you at some point you start to accept that just maybe the market got fed up of live classes. Right? And I think the market here generally, because these are actually already paid customers, right? So, but in general, the other side, right, the consumer of this show, right, in general, right, is less interested than it was before. And actually, turns out that is actually very, lots of other people are seeing it. It's a bit of a COVID era, return to normal kind of thing, right, where in the 2021s and so there was lots of people with lots of free time, working from home, whatever, lots of appetite for new information, knowledge classes, so on and so forth. Now people are back to their regular busy schedules, and there's a bit less time and appetite and so on and so forth. So it might be explained that way. But now for us, what do we do, right? And sort of now, for example, we're a bit of a pivot, right? And we're seeing Campfire, that's the thing that's picking up, right? I'm literally, now on my window, I have Campfire graph, daily messages and daily active users. I'm seeing the graph going up. I'm seeing good vibes, good things. It feels like I need more on this rather than on live classes, right? And for example, an idea that I've been contemplating is to have the experts just being available in Campfire. Maybe I still find a way to pay them, some arrangement, but now Campfire users can just ping or mention one of the experts, ask their question, and so to speak, have them on speed dial kind of experience, right? So, which I think would work really nicely. So I bring this as just one example, but to be honest with you, there were probably another 3 or 4 major pivots since I started this in November 2021 until today, July 2024, where I realized something wasn't working anymore, and I had to do some big reset and whatever. And so far, I managed to keep it alive, but I don't really know what the future is going to bring, right? I mean, I'm quite optimistic on this, moving the chips more to Campfire now, because I'm seeing the signals, but still maybe it doesn't work. But if you ask me about 2025, 2026, who knows? Right? I don't know. It's very, very hard to know. So, and personally, I think it's a bit like the kettle not pets mentality. I don't want to get too wedded with this project. I'm very proud of it. I give it my attention. I take care of the members, and I make sure that I over-deliver, actually. Right? It's sort of the bar that I try to keep myself to for every customer that I have. But if it stops being commercially successful, it's okay. Right? It will be something else. In fact, if I look at my, so this is my 6th year now as a self-employed, every single year, maybe with the exception of the last 2 years, has been dominated by a different income stream. Like year 1, for example, was freelancing. Year 2 was the book. Year 3 was another info product. Year 4 was another fractional work arrangement, freelancing type of thing. Then year 5 was small bets, and this year seems to be small bets as well. But it makes me think that it's very possible that year 7, year 8, year 9 might be dominated. The main income stream would be something different. And I think that's completely normal, completely in line with this idea of portfolios and so on. Right? So long answer maybe, and maybe not a non-answer, right? But I don't know. Would have been the short answer, what it would look like. And I don't really know what the potential is. It seems like in theory there is a potential, because the interest in self-employment, different work arrangements exists in the world, and there's a digital online community. So the total addressable market in theory is big, but whether I reach it, whether I can put up a valuable commercial offering, it's so that reaches a significant part of that is so unpredictable that I almost think on a day-by-day basis almost on how I can improve things.
Yeah. So tell me, let's dig into that, right? So what criteria do you use, right, for
Mhm.
you to know, like, this is the thing, right? Because you did something different every year of
Yeah.
working for yourself. You started with
Mhm.
freelancing, then you did a book, you did an info product, back to freelancing, small bets the next year. This year, so far, small bets. But like you said, it's unpredictable. And
Mhm.
I love how this is a very real problem that everyone faces, right? And it's always this way for entrepreneurs. It's always in
Mhm.
the moment. We always have to figure out, what are we going to prioritize now? What's going to be our next thing? What are we going to take action on today, tomorrow,
Mhm.
next year? But how do you know? What are the criteria that you look at, Daniel, for you to evaluate? Yes, this is the thing. For sure, I know this is the thing I'm going to do, or maybe not for sure, but still I'm going to do it. What are the criteria?
No,
What
good questions.
feeling?
So good question. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think I think that way. So the way that I've become comfortable working is that I wake up in the morning, right, and I take my kids to school usually. No, now it's summer, I don't, but usually I come home, I make a cup of coffee, and I think, I have an open day in front of me. I could do anything. What's the best ROI for me to spend this day, right? And sometimes based on what I'm seeing in front of me, the best ROI might be to invest a bit more. Say, let's take the present into this transition of campfire of small bets into moving the live classes to some campfire thing. That's the thing right now. That in fact, that's what I'm thinking right now. It's my goal, I should say, for this month or the next month, to figure that out. But maybe a few weeks later, I do the same thing. A new day in front of me that is done. What's the best ROI for me right now? It could be starting something completely new, right? I say, look, these things are running on their own. I don't see a significant way that I could optimize them with a decent investment of my time, right? Yes, maybe you could always do more, right? But I don't see the right ROI thing. And maybe I'm going to try something then new, for example, a completely unrelated. So I just start a cooking YouTube channel. I don't know. I probably won't, but just something completely random, which is how many things happened in my case. Most things weren't completely random. In fact, there were, again, like some continuation, but a very, very, at a big tangent, right? There was something related, but you could barely see the relationship. Um, so I'm again like and this is part of as well. Right? I try to be careful bit of mental discipline to not even assign my identity to a project. Even when I describe, it might sound like a very silly small thing. Like even in my bios on social media, when people ask me to introduce myself, I don't tend to say, I'm the founder of Small Bets or whatever. Not because I'm not, right? But because I don't want even to fool myself that this is what I should be doing right now. Because if I present myself to the world as the founder of Small Bets, I'm conditioning myself to just work on small bets. Right? It's like the obvious thing to do. I'm conditioning people to expect that that's what I should be doing, but I don't want that. I want the option to do whatever I want, right? Sort of to take opportunities as they come, be opportunistic in a good sense, and not in a bad sense. Again, some people might hear this and might feel like this might lead to not serving customers well and so on and so forth, but it doesn't have to be that. And in fact, I take it very seriously, again, to make sure that I over deliver. In fact, it's what I want to feel, right? Actually, to all my customers, and you can certainly be diversified, and you can certainly stop doing something and still have over delivered to all your customers. You have no obligation to keep doing something for eternity, right, or forever, and so on and so forth. Like small bets, for example, the community. Let's say something else happens and I want to give all my attention to that, I have multiple options to not let people down, where I could either delegate lots of the day-to-day stuff to it and just keep it running as is without new attention to make it better. But I didn't promise anyone to make it better. Right? So I keep it happening like it is. I could hand it off to someone. I'm sure there's going there. If I wanted to, I would find many, many people willing to take it off my hands and continue to try to sustain it themselves. Right? So there are parts. But I'm not thinking about those things. Right? I'm sort of thinking that if that were to happen, so be it. Right? I wouldn't feel like I lost a part of me or or whatever. again, cattle not pets. You're the farmer, cattle. You're basically, to be very maybe blunt. You milk it until it keeps to being productive, and then you slaughter it. Maybe I don't know. I took that analogy a bit too much, but but I think it's important to have that discipline. With investors in finance are disciplined like this. In fact, it's very commonly said that you shouldn't fall in love with with the things you invest in, because you start making imprudent, irrational decisions, or if you start attributing your own ego with your positions. And I think very similar in business, right? These things might stop working, not because you've done something wrong or because you didn't deliver. It's just the whims of the market sometimes. That just things change, competitors, markets, culture, expectations, pricing pressures. It might not make sense to you, or it could be something that changed in you, like some other opportunity came, and now this became a distraction, right? So I changed, not the market, right? And that's also something that would be very foolish. I would have been very foolish if I just was stubborn and just said, the first ebook that I did, that was successful, I'm going to just shut down everything else and focus on that only. I would have missed on all the other things that happened after it. So in hindsight, now it's easy to see how important I think this attitude is.
And from what I'm hearing, right, you learned a lot from each project that you went through, right? They happened in a certain order, but you weren't thinking of it that way. You weren't thinking, well, first I'm going to do an ebook, and then of course I'm going to do an info product, and then of course 3 years from now I'm going to make small bets, right? It wasn't known ahead of time the things that you were going to do, but you took the opportunity when you found it, when it came to you, and when it became clear to you, this is where I have more energy. This is where I must prioritize now. Something like that. Like, how did you know?
Yeah, it's. I think you need to have slack in the system, right? And I like to call this, right? If you're already very busy, and this is one of the challenges I think with people who have a full-time job, because it tends to, it comes with the name, right? Full-time. It tends to take all your time, all your energy, or creative capacity, and so on and so forth. So, excuse me, you have very little slack in the system to pounce on opportunities when they happen. And I think it's important to engineer your life in such a way where there's always space, where when you stumble on something, when that light bulb moment happens, you're not the kind of person who puts the idea into the ideas list and then you forget about it. You pounce on it immediately, because there's something I think a bit magical that happened when you get inspired that you can't capture in a bullet on your notes app, right? There's a lot of context. The neurons in your brain are firing in a specific way. The context that you're seeing, the context right now, right? It's important, I think, when you feel that energy, right, to test it out quickly and to pounce on it. And this has really helped me, I think, in my opinion. I used to be, and to be honest, sometimes I still do it, right, putting the things in my ideas list, but those things almost never happen. Sometimes I go look at them and say, why I was thinking about, like, I can't even remember why this seemed like a good idea to me. Like, the context was lost, right? It's just too low fidelity, right, to be trying to capture it like that. And everything that I think has been successful, right? Probably everything that I've tried, especially in the last 5-6 years, have been pretty much jumping on something very quickly, right? Today or tomorrow, that kind of thing, or this weekend. And I really think the only way to do that is by intentionally leaving space. And this is a trade-off, right? It might mean, you could be earning more, or could be working more, or building more, or growing something more, right? But by leaving some buffer that we're just wondering about. That, let me give you some specific examples. That I find a lot of inspiration from Twitter, not Twitter me posting, but me just following other people. And this became part of my daily routine, right? To spend 30, 45 minutes just scrolling on Twitter, just clicking around, seeing other people doing their things. This might seem like a bunch of wasted time if you see it as on a single case basis, because most times it's just I spend 30 minutes and nothing happens. But then a few times a year, 2-3 times a year, there's something that makes me see things completely different. Oh, interesting. Look at this thing, look at this person doing this thing. I never thought you could do something like this, or there's this opportunity here, and whatever, right? And this is part of the wondering about, right? Part of the buffer there that I think is there as an inspiration generator, I like to call it. But then I think you need to, for many of these things, once you get inspired, you need to also have some capacity to say, okay, I'm going to just do it, right? And for example, I think I did this intentionally when I mentioned at the beginning, I started looking for some freelancing gigs. I was very careful. I had to choose things that allowed me to still have spare time because I wanted to still have that buffer, safety margin, whatever you want to call it. Slack in the system probably is the right term. I like to pounce on opportunities as soon as they. Maybe part of your question was about selecting what to select to do, because I get inspired by lots of things and I get excited a little bit and I decide not to do anything about it. And I think over time I started to develop what I like to call a selection criteria, and it has been, first of all, part of the small bets. The small part is like, is this something I could do with small amount of input, right? Without me investing. I like to use the term investing a lot of my time, because I think just like how venture capitalists invest their money, we're like venture capitalists on our own ideas, but investing our time instead of money, right? So could this be something I can bring to market without investing a lot? Right now, a lot may be depending on the person. Me, I have a family, 3 young kids. My time is very limited. Somebody who's like maybe very young, no dependents, might have a bit more time, but whatever. It's something small. So this part of my second criteria, it might be something I get excited about, but then I started to think, this will be something that will take me at least 6 months to even know that to bring to market, whatever. I don't have that appetite. Right? I don't have a lot of 6-month periods left in my life. Right? That's a big, big investment. And that's it, right? I leave it on the table, no regrets. Someone else can do it. Elon Musk can do it. Someone in between me and Elon Musk in the spectrum, whatever. I'm sure it could be a small bet for someone else. Again, it's all relative. For Elon Musk, maybe building a rocket company is a small bet for him, right? It's sort of one of his income stream side projects as an extreme case. But, for say a company with 50 employees, right, might be able to take something that would be very ambitious for me as a self-employed individual, but for a medium-sized company, for them, it might be a small project, right? So it's all relative. I don't think society is losing out from people like me leaving things on the table. They just get taken by organizations or people for whom it's a prudent risk. So that's one of them. Then there's one of the other important ones, because I think it's the most misunderstood part when I talk about small bets, is, do I have a hypothesis for how this will pay off? Because again, it's not just throwing random things. Some people think that, okay, I'm just going to do some random project, keep it small, and then hopefully it works. But I think it's still too naive. I think you need to still have, it's a bit like a scientific method. Of course, this is not as rigorous as the scientific method, but when we're doing science, you tend to have a hypothesis, you do the experiment, you try to collect the observations to validate the hypothesis. And I like to approach things somewhat similarly, even though with much more fuzzy data, by saying, okay, look, like I mentioned with the book, right? I set an expectation. If this makes $5,000, I would be happy. And I did a bit of back of the math calculations. Okay, how can I make $5,000? I said, I'm going to be selling this for $25. If I get 200 customers, okay, 200 customers, where will they come from? Okay, I have 4,000 followers on Twitter. Maybe if I post it on Reddit as well, maybe I can get a few from here, a few from there. That should up to 200 something. And that might bring me the 5,000 or whatever dollars that I'm targeting. That was a viable hypothesis, right? And it had a fighting chance. If I didn't manage to convince myself that it had a viable chance, I would probably have not done it. I'd done something else. And I like to employ this still today, right? With everything I do, I try to set an expectation before I even try it. What would make me satisfied as a payoff? It's a bit like finance investing again, right? For this investment of time that I'm putting in. And I try to use what information I have, what insights I have. Some of them are guesses, right? You might say, okay, I have an email list of 35,000 people. I'm guessing that maybe 1% might be interested, or 1% might buy. It's a guess, of course. It might be much lower or much higher in reality, but at least now I have something as a baseline. And I think this is also very helpful for when you come to reflect on the outcomes. Like if, for example, it doesn't work out as you were expecting, you might say, what I misjudged, it was the conversion rate. I thought it would be 5%, but it was actually 1%. That's what happened, right? And that was the miss. But if you don't do this exercise, then you learn very little, because you were just hoping for something to work. Whether it worked or not, you don't really have anything. So that's an important part of selection criteria. Does this have a fighting chance? Do I have a hypothesis of how can I realize my expectation? And then over time, and this is a bit of luxury of having some level of success at some point, I started to add other maybe selection criteria about how does it affect my lifestyle? Is it going to, take a lot of time on my calendar? Is it going to reduce my flexibility? Is it enjoyable? Is it something that I like doing? Blah, blah, blah. Like obvious things that I think in the beginning, maybe you can't be too picky on these because you want your first small wins. it's better to get some momentum going, and then as things start to go along, you can start being a bit more selective, right? But I highly encourage people to think, to have some selection criteria. This, again, like VCs have selection criteria. And in fact, I think there's a lot to inspire from VCs. I don't like being a founder in a VC's portfolio, but VCs themselves have a very sweet arrangement because they have their portfolio, right? They're very diversified, lots of income streams. And they also have selection criteria on who to invest in, right? Based on something, right? Based on the field, or based on the founders, or based on the whatever, right? And I think we should act like VCs for our own ideas and have our own selection criteria, have our own portfolio. And the main difference is that instead of investing money, we're investing time, mostly, most of us, right? Which, when we think about it, is as valuable and as scarce as money, right? So I think it's a very good analogy and
I think
metaphor.
so. Yeah, it's our currency, right? It is
Yeah.
literally the only currency we have in one way, right?
Yep.
Life, all you have is time. If you're going to invest some part of your time, and then that's, to me, that takes me to some of the other parts that we talk about in this
Mhm.
podcast for entrepreneurs, because as entrepreneurs, the one important thing is to balance our lives in some way,
Mhm.
right? And so you mentioned you have kids, and so
Yeah.
there are times during the school year you spend some quality time taking them to school. Tell me, like, what is the quality time? What's most important to you when you're spending time with your family? What are some of the most important quality times that you get to spend with them, and what do you do in that time?
So I think one of the benefits of this, the self-employment lifestyle is that you can take it again on a day-by-day basis, right? And I think probably the most thing I enjoy and I'm very grateful to have right now is the ability to say, look, it's a sunny day outside today. Let's go to the park, right? Let's go for a hike and whatever, without having to ask anyone for permission, without having to, disrupt something important, and so on and so forth. And these might sound like very small things, right? But they certainly have been very important very important to me, at least in this current stage of my life. Maybe when kids grow up, maybe this won't be as important. Again, this is part of the flexibility, right, that you can adjust as your life changes. But yeah, this is one of the main things also I was missing when I was an employee. I was getting paid a lot. I had a very prestigious title, working at a prestigious company with all the good stuff. But my time was committed, right? And I couldn't take things. When something unexpected happens, for example, negative things, like one of the children is sick, it's a big stress. Right now, it's much less because you can adapt, and even for the good things, again, like there's kids randomly have a day off today. It's a nice day. Let's go do something, and those kinds of things. So yeah, that's probably one of the things that's also prompted me, right, to take the plunge into self-employment. I think many people tend to use their kids almost as an excuse to keep deferring, taking the plunge into working for themselves because it does feel riskier. But I think for me it was a motivator, right? They were still very young when I took the plunge. My youngest was still 1, and my oldest was 3. It was very painful, right? It was basically missing out a lot from their childhood, being with them, and all those good things.
Yeah, so I'm hearing strong family values, right? You really felt that pain, right? You wanted
Yeah.
to build those memories with your kids, and you weren't getting that time from, the requirements of the job. You
Mhm.
you couldn't just take away, from the job so that you could carve out the time that you needed so that your heart could get
Yeah.
what your heart
It was
needed.
harder, and it had to be much more structured. That we had to plan something in advance. It had to be on a weekend, and it had to be this day. And then, if it turned out that that day was very rainy, for example, then everything gets cancelled. Whereas now there's the flexibility, like we don't have to plan it, so that we can just improvise, right? And it has added a lot. Especially again, it's like a dynamic young family, lots of things happening. It's very hard to plan in advance, which again I'm very very appreciating. And fundamentally, when I think about it, this is what I don't want to be taken away from me, right? Essentially, right? It's and sometimes I joke, right? It's my only business plan is to make sure that I continue to make my self-employment work sustainable enough such that I can maintain this. It's not really goal-driven or growing revenue. I mean, I'd like to do all those things. This is the primary thing, fundamentally. right? At least in the stage of my life. Again, I maybe in 10 years or whatever, things will be different, right? I'm not thinking that far yet. But yeah, it's certainly an important one. And when I mentioned in the beginning, I start a new day and I look at all the options. One of the options sometimes is just not doing anything, or or spending time with my family. Right? It's sort of the work competes with those things. I mean, competes in a good way. Right? But if I don't have a good way to invest my time, maybe the best way to invest my time is, I don't know, watch a Netflix show with my wife, right? And that's the best use of the time today, right? And because there isn't something more important or very important that needs to happen right now.
So do you have a scheduled structure
I
for
don't. No. Yeah. Not very
or
much.
it's
Yeah.
just now today? So you kind of plan. What I'm hearing is you kind of plan in the morning for the day.
Yes. And even there, I wouldn't even say plan. I just think of how should I be spending my time right now, right? Because even during the day, things change, right? So, but yeah, and this might sound extreme, and I'm sure there's some people for whom this might not work. Sorry, that even if they were self-employed, they probably will want to have some structure because otherwise they feel too randomized and they don't know what to do. But I think it's important to find how you're wired, and I certainly think this is how I flourish, right? With little structure. I don't want the structure, and this is probably one of the things that really annoyed me when I was an employee, that you're forced to work in some structure, that you can't really get out of it. Again, I understand it. Because if you're managing people, you can't just have people just doing whatever they want and wandering about and whatever. But I really think I discovered this in me, that this is my better way to work, right? Where not even weekdays and weekends. It's just, again, it's not that I work weekends and whatever, but it's just what options do I have in front of me? And this might be work related, family related, personal things, going to the gym, and all these things are all in the mix. And I decide there and then, right, based on how I feel, how's the weather, what are the opportunities, what are the urgent things, right? So if there's something in the business that's very critical, right, and that gets priority, of course, right? So all those variables, right, which tend to change basically almost every day.
Fitness in particular, right? So that's another one of the topics that we talk about. Fitness in particular is something that requires some time,
Consistency, right? Yeah.
right? Yeah, some
Yes.
consistency.
Right.
So how does that work for you? How do you get yourself to the gym? How do you make sure that you get the consistency in your fitness?
Right. No, very good question. And maybe this is one of the things that I try to be consistent on. I think something that really helped me a lot is getting one of the wearables and tracking things, because I have the rings there and I do my 30 minutes and my one workout of the day, and I make sure I spend 700 active calories. And it's something that allows me to look at my budget, or whatever you call it, right? So I look at my watch and I see, I haven't done my workout yet and I'm still below. Okay, it's 8 p.m. I should go for a run now, for a 15-minute, 20-minute run or whatever, right? And this has helped me a lot. In general, I don't like these kinds of things. For many other things, for business-related things, I don't like keeping track of streaks and accountability stuff and whatever, because I don't want to feel beholden to those things. But with fitness, knowing that for better or worse, right, our body needs some physical exercise to continue to function, and we're not necessarily living in our natural habitat anymore, and we need to replicate a little bit. It's these wearables really helped me. I was skeptical at first. I got my Apple Watch couple to 2-3 years ago, I think, and I think just for that feature alone, just to show me that I'm below what I should be doing, has been very helpful. Like to then, but again, like it's even doing a workout, right? I wait usually until it's the right time for it, right? Maybe there's time between two calls, right? And now is the right time. Let me squeeze it in and get it done. I think the consistency for working out, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to go to the gym exactly at 5 p.m. every day, right? But as long as you do it, say, whatever your goal says, you do it 3 times a week or 4 times a week or every day, whatever, as long as you get your goal, you're usually good, right? And yeah, sort of tracking here has basically been the solution, right, to make sure that I don't fall behind.
So for people who don't know what rings are, can you explain what the rings functionality is?
So I have two wearables right now, the Apple Watch and the Aura Ring. Right? The Aura Ring, to be honest, I'm mostly using it for sleep tracking. And sleep, probably out of all my fitness stuff, all my health stuff, was the thing that I was struggling with. Again, mostly 3 young kids. There were always someone has a bad dream, someone is sick, someone, is thirsty and needs to go to the bathroom and whatever. And I think as I got older now, I'm 41. I used to be the kind of person who, as soon as I hit the bed, I go to sleep. And if I wake up in the middle of the night, I go to sleep immediately. For whatever reason, it became much harder. Now, if I was waking up at 3 a.m., it takes me, sometimes I can't go back to sleep, to be honest. And the Apple Watch does a very mediocre, probably a bit less than mediocre sleep tracking. But it's sort of it's not as accurate. The ring turned out to be very, very accurate. It even captures naps. If you take a 20-minute nap, it's very reliable on how it at least captures the duration. It tries to also measure the sleep cycles, which I don't take much notice of, but at least I try to, I don't know, ideally 8 hours, but at least I try to get at least 7 hours between night and stealing a nap here and there. And that has helped a lot. I was looking, oh yeah, I only slept 5 hours at night. I didn't need to find some time to take a nap today, otherwise I'm going to suffer from it. The Apple Watch, I mostly use it for just exercise, right? So running is my thing mostly, right? I go to the gym as well, do some resistance training. Those, to be honest, I don't track. I just track that I went. I don't track what I did in the watch. I mark it that I went to my program. But I like running. I like sort of turning it on, going for a 3-mile run, looking at my times. And sort of it reminds me that basically I think probably the main feature, it reminds me that I haven't done it yet today, right? So on the Apple Watch, there's a feature, many of you who have it has the rings for your activity goals, and it's a very clear signal that the day is approaching the end and you're not there yet, especially for someone without a structure like mine, because if you're the kind of person who always work out at 7 a.m. in the morning, you probably don't need it, that is in your routine. But for me, since it's very random, it's a good reminder, right? So I don't know if this helped answer the question. And by the way, the ring does also lots of the features of the watch. You can also do heart rate monitoring and fitness monitoring and whatever. But at least I just got more familiar with the watch, at least for the types of workouts that I do. And the ring, I think, is great for sleep tracking, which is my my weakest part of the health profile.
I think we're very similar in these ways because once my son was born, I couldn't sleep. And I didn't know how to rebuild that muscle. I never had that problem before, but he would wake up at night and cry. And the only way to console him was to pick him up, and I had to carry him and walk. If I stopped, he would cry. If I sat, he'd cry. If I put him back down, he would cry. I had to continue to walk and hold him. So, but some of these problems that you're describing, it's very familiar to me. So I like what I'm hearing, how you found some solutions and how the devices have helped us. And I think that I think also as entrepreneurs, we love dashboards. We love to measure things. So what you're saying, the device, it tells you, hey, you're behind. Oh, okay. Catch up. I can't put my dashboard down.
And to be honest, I try to not be too beholden to those for business stuff. I don't mind if this month is not as good as last month or whatever, because I don't want to feel a slave to my metrics. But I think maybe the exception I do here is for health and fitness, because those are just realities. Right? That in our natural habitat we were just doing, just to to go find breakfast, we had to go hunt for food. Now that we find breakfast in the fridge, basically we need to go waste energy in the gym instead,
or run around the neighborhood.
Exactly.
So that brings us to the last F. The fourth F is fun. Tell me about fun. What do you do for fun? Because we can't just work all the time. And also, we've talked about some fitness, some family things. I know you have young kids, and so it can be really tricky to find things. But something that's just fun. What do you do for that?
Yeah, so probably my thing is DIY around the house. I recently started woodworking as a hobby, roughly one of the pandemic type hobbies. I started in 2020, but I really enjoy it, right? Making my own small piece of furniture. I set up my garage now into a small workshop, and it's one of those things that if I really didn't have to work, I would do it all the time, right? And in general, I just like improving my surroundings, like my home, making it better, gardening, refurbishing a room, and whatever. Always thinking about new ways of making my surroundings nicer. And again, and even when I'm busy, right, I almost kind of like I try to do it for fun, right? Just from part fun, part satisfaction. To be honest, it's a bit of a mix of I love seeing the work done. It's very satisfying, I think it's also fun and the challenge of doing it, figuring out and whatever. Like if you look at my YouTube history of watch history, it's all woodworking, DIY, building a bathroom from scratch and all all those kinds of stuff. It's not very entrepreneurial. Like it's the kind of things I like to watch for relaxing. So this is one of my main thing, I would say. I'm very this might sound a bit not very common, right? But I'm more of an indoor enthusiast rather than outdoor. Doesn't mean I don't like the outdoors. I go running in the outdoors. I live in the mountains, beautiful place. But I love the indoors. Right? It's not like I'm not the kind of person who I can't stay a minute inside. I need to go out all the time. Right? So it's part of making my home nicer, better, more pleasant, and so on and so forth. It's very fun to me. That's probably, I would say, right now, at least in this phase of my life, the main thing I would say that occupies a good part of my life as well. That I balance this with work, with family, right, and trying to squeeze a little bit of almost every day, I would say, right, to do something small, right? How can I improve my house a little bit today, right? Might be add a hook there, or do something small, and sometimes it's a bit more bigger projects. Let's strip out a room and build it from scratch.
I like that. So
Yeah.
you're spending some time in each area of life, and this can really help to support the feeling that you're improving in kind of every way,
Yes.
right? You do
Yes,
something.
and it's the maybe the aspirational part. Like to be completely honest, it's not always like that, right? But that's the aspiration, and I think many times it happens. And I like this rule, especially for the hobby part, even business actually, right? To every day do something small, right? Might be very something small, like just help a customer or whatever, or reply to something, right? Or do a small promotion. It might not be something significant and so on, but it's a nice feeling to feel you've progressed a little bit. And of course, family is a constant, right? So it's certainly something every day as well.
So let's go to the lightning round part
Yes.
of the interview. So tell me, in terms of like your financial health,
Mhm.
your financial happiness and well-being, what do you feel like is the best investment that you've made in your life, the best decision you've made for
Mhm.
your financial health and happiness?
So I should answer quickly. How does the lightning round work? Like, is it one?
It could, yeah, it's just questions that are kind of like more to the point, a little,
Okay, got it.
and less
Yeah,
open-ended.
so that's why I asked. Okay, I love to have a very to the point answer, but I think financial health. Let's see the best way to describe it. I think and this is a bit of Nassim Taleb's ideas as well, right, that I applied to my own financial discipline, I should say. That it seems like in theory, right, there's probably some optimal way to arrange your finances, to invest and budget and whatever, and so on and so forth. But I think the best thing that has helped me, again, inspired a lot by Taleb's thoughts, has been to arrange my finances in such a way that give me the least headaches and give me the most buffer for unexpected things, which is usually at attention for optimizing for finance growth or whatever, and so on and so forth. Basically, to be very concrete, and maybe this is the thing, which might sound very crazy to many people, is that I have some savings, and almost all of them are not invested, or just maybe just in US treasuries, or so the most basic thing you could imagine. In hindsight, I lost out hundreds of thousands of dollars, especially in the recent last 5 years boom of the stock market and whatever. But I think the hedge that this has given me is to not wake up in the morning having to worry about the stock market. Is it crashing? Did I just lose 50% overnight? Because what's going to happen. Basically, and this might not apply to everyone, right? And it depends a lot on the circumstances. But I think at least in my current situation right now, I have a very speculative business, right, where things are still quite volatile. There are lots of things changing. It's very hard to tell you even the rest of the year, to be honest, right? I mean, yes, already 6 months have passed, but I don't know if it's going to be twice as much as the first half, right? So and since I have a very volatile speculative business, I want my finances to be as boring and as predictable, just at least keep up with inflation, if anything, and there's a buffer. A buffer for what? Well, a buffer for anything. Maybe a business opportunity that needs to get deployed some cash, maybe some bad thing, house burns down, or some major expense or health problem or whatever. It's there, right? So, and this I think has given me both peace of mind, but I think it sort of requires a bit of mental discipline to feel okay with leaving money on the table, right? Because you see others saying, I bought Nvidia in 2021, I made $1 million, right? And in the meantime, I was just making 5%, at least right now. I used to make like 0.1%, not until too long ago. So I know it's not the very to the point answer, right? But that's sort of this binary, right, barbell, right, startup calls it. It's very safe, boring on my side, and that's my business that's doing the more speculative side of my finances. Now, if I were to end up in a situation like I was when I had a full-time job where my income, so my profession was very stable, then I was much more speculative with my finances and savings. I was investing individual stocks and being more speculative there. It was part fun, part growth, and right. But now things have changed.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the barbell is, in both cases, you have one side boring and one
Yeah.
side more exciting. So
Yeah.
if you have a boring job, then you have more exciting
Exactly.
investments.
Yes.
If you have a very exciting business, yeah, be a little more boring with your investment.
There you
That
go.
makes sense. Okay, so for fitness, tell
Yes.
me what's changed your life with fitness? What's been the best decision with this?
Yeah, so I think I'm the classic. I used to be very fit every day to the gym when I was in my 20s and sports and everything. Then life became busy and I forgot everything. And I still in my head, oh yeah, I'm still fit, whatever, until I turned 35, 36, and I realized, I gained like 30 pounds and, my blood work wasn't as amazing as I should have been. And it's sort of a bit of a realization that I need to change something. And um, uh, I've been trying different things to get sort of back in shape, and I think, as I mentioned before, sort of my targets. I'm not doing anything. I don't have the desire or anything to do anything competitive anymore or competitive sports, whatever. It's purely longevity and better health, right? That I'm optimizing for. So again, very boring, I would say. Like just improving cardiovascular health. Somehow I was never considered myself a runner, but again, it's one of those weird things on inspiration / things on Twitter where somebody who I follow said, to be fit, you should feel comfortable running 30 minutes. What was it? It was something like you should feel comfortable just going for a 30-minute run, something like that. And I said, at the time I wasn't. I was so out of shape, right, that probably even running half a mile, I would be out of breath. I needed to walk. But I felt like this is actually not that. It's not like running a marathon or something that seemed out of my reach. 30 minutes, and I started doing it, and I started enjoying it. I sort of built it in my routine now, and I run almost every day at this point, right? So that's my VO2 cardiovascular fitness aspect. I mix it sometimes. I do some cycling, mostly for injury prevention and to mix things up. Right? But I don't like it that much, to be honest. I do it just to not get too worn out. And resistance training, again, it's not. I used to enjoy it a lot when I was 20, whatever. I was doing it mostly for aesthetic reasons, right, just to look better. Now it's not the most enjoyable thing I do. I do it just because I know it's important, basically, right? And I don't want to. I'm sure I'm already. I'm 41 now. That's a stage in my life where you start losing lean muscle, and my goal at this point is try to get maybe to my 60s with the in the best position possible. So then I delay the the natural progression. But yeah, 3 times a week at the gym, just the regular boring 3 body parts every cycle, progressive overload, nothing crazy, and sort of cardio every day, basically. It's my program.
That's really great. I love how you took just a random tweet on Twitter
Yeah.
and you allowed it to, play around in your mind, and you felt like, listen, they might have said, here's the funny thing. What if instead they had said, you should just be able to go run for 8 hours a day. It's easy. Everyone should be able to do it. What if they had taken that instead?
Yeah, I think some things they find you at the right time, right? And I think what happened there, a bit of context. I was taking my kid to school. It was about 0.7 miles walk, right? So we're walking it, and then I was trying to run it back, right? And I was feeling that I was really out of shape, and I was almost ashamed and feeling like this bad. I need to fix this. I see all these other people running. It's like, how come I can't barely run half a mile? And And I started doing some research about, how do I improve my fitness and running and whatever. And I think the street found me at the right time. Like, it wasn't the right dose again, because I started thinking, okay, I was already starting to do some. I was already improving a little bit. I was, say, for example, I was already running a mile, even though it was still hard, but I could see myself getting to 3 miles in 30 minutes, for example. I said, okay, it's the right dose, and it found me at the right time. Probably if I heard it 6 months before, probably it would have made any difference to me, right? But it found me there. So this is funny how sometimes you find something finds you, and it helps you at the right time.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's amazing. So, okay, so we covered the best investment for financial health and fitness. What about for your family? What's improved your life with your family the most? What change did you make? What idea? What thing did you buy or do with your time that has really improved
Yeah.
your family?
I'm going to be repeating myself here, but it certainly has been the transition from full-time employment to self-employment. This flexibility to be able to do things on a whim. I think all our family is that kind, right, where we adapt. And I think especially when you have a young family, it's the value of being able to adapt with how things are. Actually, just today, right, we were planning to go for a trip, but the youngest was a bit sick, and we said, okay, we're not going to do it. We'll do it like in 2 or 3 days. Again, like, it would have been much, much harder if I had to take time off from work, and now we can't go. No, it's nothing. It's whatever. We'll do it on Wednesday instead of Monday. Right. So, and I think, and this is interesting, that because when I quit my job at Amazon, to be honest, I felt a bit selfish, right? Because I was leaving a lot of money on the table. I was earning more, and I'm still not matching the income that I was making before, and maybe I never will, right? And if I was just me, who cares? It's just me. But I remember thinking, it's just not my money. That's money that my family, I could be leaving it to my kids. So it felt a bit like I'm doing it a bit for myself. But I think the thing that compensated for that I think as well has helped to have the support as well of my family, my wife, and whatever to do this, has been that, the benefit has been this flexibility, me being at home, me being available, me being flexible, and we're all flexible because of that. Because before then, I was always the bottleneck because of work, basically. Where now we're able to, to adapt and do things, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's certainly the main thing, right? And I'm super, super grateful that I managed to sort of make it work.
It sounds like the trade-off is you have the family values, right? That's already a part of you. So that your time with your family is actually worth more than the difference in the salary, right? Mm-hmm. So even though, as you said, right, any extra money that you would have earned, of course, would have gone to your kids, but really you're giving them the gift of you now. Mm-hmm. So that you can be with them, you can create the relationship with them. Some people think, I've heard some people talk about, I never knew my dad growing up. He introduced mm-hmm. himself to me when I turned 18. Mm-hmm. Like we lived in the same house, but we never talked. And then once I was an adult, he said, "Hi, nice to meet you."
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So you're there with them.
No, that's what was happening to me. Right? I mean, they were still very young, but I was. I used to luckily live close to home, close to work, so I didn't have a long commute. But still, you leave when they're just woke up. You arrive home when they're very tired. They were young. They were about to go to sleep. You barely see them. And then weekends, you're stressed. You have other things, right? And whatever. It's and I think what made me even realize is when I looked around me and I see my colleagues and maybe colleagues who were even more higher up than me, they were probably even worse. So it didn't look like this was going to improve just if I get a new promotion. Oh yeah, So I looked around me and I realized, like, even the ones that were successful, right, in those places were still have a lifestyle that I didn't envy at all, right? So yeah, look, it's hard. Like I don't. It is a hard thing because when it's easy to say, how much your family time is worth and whatever, but in reality, it's a very hard thing to do that because even now, still, I choose to spend time on work instead of being with family for some things. So I still have to make the trade-off, and sometimes it's hard to do, right? But
yes,
I think the mistake, right, and I think that what I encourage people to reconsider is that it's okay to leave some money on the table, right? I think something for most of us, we can't make ourselves say, I could be making more and not go after it. But you could be earning less and have a significantly better lifestyle, right? I don't think that's a very controversial thing, right? But when you look at how most people behave, very few people choose that trade-off. right? So it makes you think that there's a bit of a fallacy of some sort, right? That makes people just choose so what's not the right thing to them. And I think more perplexing is probably sometimes it's the most successful people, right? The people who in theory have the most options, because not we're talking working class, hardship. They just somebody who needs to work 3 jobs to make ends meet, that unfortunately don't have any of these flexibilities. It's the people who usually are the smartest, most educated, highest salaries, and in theory they have the most options, right? And they choose to even, live the rat race lifestyle rather than leaving some on the table and improving their lives instead.
Yeah, it's a simple, right? The idea is simple, but to achieve it might not be so easy, right? If we
Yeah.
want to live a balanced life, sometimes maybe some people don't have that same value, right? Maybe they don't feel like
Mhm.
they need to support the family value for themselves. But for people who do, right, it's very clear. Doesn't mean that it's easy to strike
Yes.
a balance.
So,
So, I applaud you, where you're going with this, and I think that it's important to share our stories so people
mhm.
can see, like, okay, here's how Daniel did it. Wait, how can I apply that to what I'm doing? You know,
Yep.
Daniel's smart, Daniel's successful, Daniel's happy. Like maybe not always, but
Mhm. Yeah.
sometimes he's all those things, and I want to feel that way. What can I learn from him? And that's what this whole interview is about. So let's talk. Let's the last of the best investments is for fun. What
Mhm.
what have you invested in your life for fun that gives you the most fun?
Uh, yeah, I think I mentioned it before, right? Sort of dedicating dedicating some space for a workshop has been very helpful to me. Right, and now um, it's something that again I don't want to be taken away from me. Right, it's having that space where I can build something. Again, this is because of my peculiar interest in making my own things, doing some DIY, whatever. Right? But I can't imagine myself now going, for example, living in an apartment where I don't have my space. And again, this is of course it's a luxury that I can certainly do it, right? But it has helped me it has given me so much satisfaction and joy, right? And that it's certainly something that actually. So it's yeah. Look, and to be honest, again, it's a bit irrational that I probably over invested because you start buying tools and there's better tools and then you start using, and it is not something that made sort of furniture cheaper for us, right? Because if you factor in all the things that I bought, um, probably they will never pay for itself. But it's more of again like of a fun hobby slash satisfaction, maybe they're related type of thing. Um, so yeah, and by the way, basically we have a 2-car garage, right? So nothing crazy, and we still park one of the cars inside the garage, but everything is on wheels, right? So I can move the car out in the driveway and then move everything, right? And I have a pretty good functioning workshop, right? That you could almost do anything in it, right? So you don't need the lot. You do need some space, but you don't necessarily need a lot. And some people work even from a 1-car garage and even putting the car in, right? So it's something that for those who are tempted, there's ways you can.
And how would they get started? What's the minimum kind of stuff you need
Yes.
if you're going to start a
So
workshop? This is your mini class.
so there's I'm not affiliated with this, but I took it and I really liked it. There's a course called The Weekend Woodworker. I think the site is theweekendwoodworker.com, and this guy has a free tool list of the minimum things you need to do a lot of great projects like coffee tables, chest of drawers. I forgot like some really decent looking, solid wood stuff. And this tool list is under $1,000, at least in the US. And there's a very basic table saw, very basic circular saw, basic miter saw, like the basic things, right? And the entire thing basically is like $990, which is a very, very, you probably will want to upgrade once if you start to take it seriously on some of these tools, not because you need to, but because it makes it more enjoyable. You could probably still continue to work with these. In fact, some professionals they choose intentionally to work with just because they go through them so quickly that they just buy the cheaper things. But higher quality stuff just become just more enjoyable. So it's just a pleasure thing. But so there's this tool list with this course, but also the course is only about $70, and there's I think 10 projects, if I'm not mistaken, that you can all do in a one weekend, like every single project in one weekend, with just this list of tools that is under $1,000. Very, very great course. I went through it all. I did it all. You start making your own workbench, which is a bit meta, right, from where you work, with just 2x4 construction lumber, very cheap, super sturdy workbench. I made 3 of them. I still have them. And then you jump straight into then you make a small outdoor table, I remember, right, which is very, very cute, very easy. And then you do a coffee table, you do a dining table, I think is the last one in the list, or one of the more advanced ones. But there's an outdoor bench and a few other things, which is real stuff that you can use, sit on, eat on, whatever. And it's very, again, it's a bit of our philosophy that because again, like one of the demotivating things in woodworking is like when a project stretches too long, you get fed up of it. And I did this mistake in the beginning. I started making a dining table once. I was working on the top, and it like took 6 weeks, and I still haven't built the frame. And then you get fed up, right? And it gets lingered, and you lose interest. But that's what I liked about this course, because everything can be done in 3 days, and actually even quicker if you really want to to burn out a little bit. But it's a great starting point. It was recommended to me as well by some stranger on Twitter. I loved it, and I think it was because if you go on YouTube, there's lots on YouTube. But if you want to go advanced, the YouTube is gold mine. But YouTube is again very daunting for a beginner because you see all these pros with fancy workshop. Like this guy, the weekend woodworker guy, just looks scrappy. Just has these 5 tools here, just lumber from Home Depot. Let's build something, and then the end result is wow! I built this. Wow, just in a Saturday, and it's incredible, right? So yeah, that's how I would start.
Also, I think it's kind of amazing for us, people who are working with the digital world all the time,
Yes.
again, to take some time on the weekend and build something in the physical world. Like
Absolutely,
we're still building, but this one we can touch. This
yes.
one we can sit on. We can use it, to eat on. We can share. Our family can use it too. So
Look, it's incredible how satisfying. So I have the 2 pieces of furniture that I really love. I have a desk in my den, not this one because I'm not at home right now, but I have a desk where every time I sit on it, and this was, I really took care about it, like proper joinery drawers, like high quality hardwoods, but it makes me so happy. And then I have the dining table, same thing, round dining table, nothing fancy, cherry top, but we sit on it and it's like, you remember I built this, right? And you remember sanding it and finishing it and everything. It's very, very satisfying, I think. But yeah, you just have to make sure you don't lose your fingers. That was a bit of a dangerous hobby. But there is actually, to be honest, I think the safety with many of these tools nowadays is very good. Like this table saw. That's why I said like some things you want to upgrade. I mean, you can start with a $400 table saw, but if eventually you upgrade to a $3,000 table saw, there's like this technology where if the blade touches human flesh, the blade just disappears, breaks, and like all this fancy stuff, right? So, but you have to treat it with respect because it's lots of fast-moving blades close to your fingers.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, so the last question. I told the guy who helped me with this. He says I have to ask, who do you recommend that I interview next?
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Entrepreneurs, right? I imagine.
Yeah.
So let me tell you the people who I respect maybe the most. Maybe because I don't know who you interviewed yet, right? But some might be hard to get, to be honest, right? But this, of course, is going to sound because from my view of I like people who are doing something like I'm doing, right? In portfolios of projects, whatever. So there's a guy, Mark Liu. Do you know him? He's from France. He's living in Thailand, I think, right now. He's doing really well. He's like built probably 24 small micro software projects. And he's going a bit viral right now because one of them really took off. Like after like 20 or 30 projects or whatever, one of them is a very simple thing. It's like some boilerplates to help you develop your apps faster, and it's like making $100,000 a month in revenue, like insane volume. But it's interesting to see the dynamics of the portfolio strategies because together with this great outlier, there's also some that are making $3,000 a month, $2,000, and those also went up. And for a long time, it was being sustained by all those small projects. Now it's easy to see the outlier and say, oh yeah, you should only do this thing. And I like his attitude that even with this big success, he's still doing other things, right? And he's a super, super interesting guy. Mark Liu. He's on Twitter. I can forward you the details later. Then there's another guy called Tony Din. He's also on Twitter. He was similar He's from Vietnam. I'm not sure where he lives right now. He might still be living in Vietnam, actually. Similar things. Like he basically started building small software projects, like almost features, not even products, like a small screenshotting tool. When I think about it, why do we need a screenshotting tool? There's already the OS, my Mac OS already comes with one, but he just added a feature that the Mac OS version doesn't have. Right? It was enough to have a viable product to charge $20 for it or something like that. And basically, again, like build very small things, right? And he sold some. Recently, I think he sold he sold the screenshotting tool, I think for $200,000 or something like that. I might be forgetting the exact numbers, but he's all very much building public, sharing his story, and so on and so forth. Again, lots of parallels with what I've done, even though his is more in sort of these micro software projects. But very interesting guy, super fascinating. And now he has, again, like usually when you're doing these portfolios, there's always some outlier. Now he seems to stuck it. Not as extreme as with Mark Liu, but he has one of these AI interfaces for many of these sort of LLMs, right? It's called Typing Mind, which is doing really well. And he's actually something interesting that you don't see a lot of these solo entrepreneurs doing, is he's going after corporate customers as well. He just got SOC compliance and sort of doing with the things that most individual entrepreneurs tend to avoid like the plague. So certainly one of those two would be a super fascinating guest. I would certainly listen to them. Arvid Khan, you know Arvid? He also has a popular podcast. He's an interesting creator. I think what he does really well, I think it's interesting, is that he's great at, he's inspiring because he also, together with building software projects, he's also building a media business, right? So he's building public stuff instead of just sharing it on Twitter. He converted it into something that is making him 5 figures a month, right? So he has a podcast and he takes sponsors. He has a newsletter and he takes sponsors. He sort of does social posts and other things that has like probably 6 media related things, that all sort of somewhat smallish income streams, but when you add them together, he's getting all the credibility and reputation and attention from building public. But I do it and I don't make money directly from it, but he's also monetizing it with just sponsors and regular media stuff, which is very interesting. And now he recently, I think about a year ago, he started a new software AI product where it might be interesting to you as well. It allows you to create alerts on podcasts. So he basically is transcribing all the podcasts that get published. So you can say, for example, where to get alerted if your name gets mentioned in someone else's podcast. Right? It's very interesting, almost like a search engine for podcasts, but it works also in real time. Right? So it's called PodScan. It's very, very interesting project. So I'll volunteer those 3. Maybe those 3 are good ones. So Mark Liu, Tony Din, and Arvid Khan. And I can share you the details if you don't have them.
Yes, please do. Thank you so much, Daniel. I really appreciate your time today, and everything you shared, I think it's all really powerful things that people can listen to, and they can take it and take some spin on it for their own life, and then also we talked about the Small Bets community. If people want to join, that's smallbets.com. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a thriving community with lots of activity, lots of support, and all the things that we talked about today, such as partnerships and cool things happening there, experts that are available. And Daniel, this has been fascinating to me. I really appreciate your time and sharing all of your stories and your insights. Thank you so much.
Sure. No, this was great. Thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff, so this was very fun. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks so much, Daniel. Until next time.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.